Good morning, everybody. I'm so glad that you're here. My name is Michelle Hartgraves. I am a nutritional health coach for Natural Grocers. I've got a degree in nutrition science, a bachelor's, and then I've got a master's in public health and certified health coach through the American Council on Exercise. And today I'm going to be talking about the nutrition support and lifestyle support for your brain. So I'm going to throw a bunch of information at you. But before I do, I want to say that this class is not intended to diagnose, it's not treating or medicating any diseases. And the dietary supplements that I talk about today in the foods can interact with prescription medications. So if you're taking a prescription medication, it's important that you become informed about any possible interactions. All right, so I'm excited to come to you as a representative of Natural Grocers, just a little plug. So they were actually founded in 1955. We're new here. We opened up in September 29th on South Glenstone. There's about 165 stores counting. They've opened up some new ones recently in the United States, and it was started in 1955 by Margaret and Philip Isley as a door-to-door business, then known as Vitamin Cottage, because they believe that everybody should have access to nutritional information to make informed decisions about their health and access to good quality food. All right, so today we're going to be talking about brain health, and I'm going to be talking about foods that can help support and feed your brain, important lifestyle factors, and how to optimize with key supplements. So if you were to peek inside your brain, you'd probably find a biological computer that is far more complex than anything else. Our brains are pretty amazing, and it's comprised of 6 trillion cells. The brain structure and biochemistry depends on the nutrition and lifestyle factors, and you are what you eat. So the nutrients make the biochemical building blocks for everything in our body. So our brain has to work really, really, really hard, and it's roughly only weighs about 3 pounds on average, but it uses a lot of energy, and it's more active than any other tissue except for our heart muscle. An average brain has 10 to 100 billion neurons or nerve cells, and psychologists approximate that we have over 60,000 thoughts a day, and it only takes from 0.2 to 2 milliseconds from one nerve cell to receive communication from the next. And every experience that we experience affects and changes our brain for either the good or for the better. And I would say it's probably safe to say that we've all been under tremendous periods of stress in our life. The chronic stress changes our brain, and it actually starts to shrink. The brain chemistry is altered through chronic stress, and our cognitive process decline, and we can experience many negative effects. But the good news is that with a nutrition diet, lifestyle factors, and a few key supplements, we can help support our brain and nurture it back to health, to a more optimal state of functioning. So it's important to note first that not all stress is bad. We assume that stress is bad, but the adrenaline and the cortisol actually work together to help us create new connections to our brains and helps activate our hippocampus, which is important and which is involved in our memory and our learning. Stress can help us build new memories, and it can help us improve our mood and encourage creative thinking that stimulates our brain to grow connections within itself. An appropriate stress response is an acute and a healthy, necessary part of life, because without that cortisol and adrenaline, it would be impossible to form new memories or to learn. And it's when the stress becomes chronic that becomes an issue. And that's what we refer to the stress hormone feedback loop that goes on. When you're under a lot of stress, a couple of different things will happen. Our brain will send signals to our adrenal glands. Then our adrenal glands will release the adrenaline, which is an acute stress response. And then if the stress continues for 2 minutes or longer, our adrenals will continue to release cortisol. The cortisol then travels to the hippocampus in our brain, and then the hippocampus will send the signals to our brain to turn down the stress hormone cortisol. It's important to know that with the increased adrenaline, we get that increased heart rate, our blood vessels are contracted, and then our body begins to go into the fight or flight mode that many of us well know. So the chronic stress, so there's chances are that many of us have probably been under multiple stresses over short periods of time, where you just feel like you can't be hit with another thing and then you're hit with something else. So what happens is your hippocampus is actually, like I was saying earlier, trying to turn down that stress production, the cortisol production, but at the same time, a new stressor is being perceived before the hippocampus has the chance to tell your body to turn down the cortisol. So our adrenalines are starting to already make new cortisol because our brains want to pay attention to new stressors and not our hippocampus at that time because it feels like it's going to save our life. For example, maybe it needs it to be there in case a bear is running at us, or we have to make a quick decision when we're driving because of another driver or icy, difficult road conditions. So when the bad stress outweighs the good, and as the cortisol rises, we start noticing that our body is sending us signals. And that's when we can no longer cope with the chronic stress. And signals that a healthy tension has started into the bad stress comes in the form of like mental fogginess, maybe you're cold all the time, you're sick, frequent colds, an oppressed immune system, maybe you're greater sensitivity to aches and pains, immune hypersensitivity, autoimmune disorders, food or seasonal allergies or sensitivities, and much more. And in addition to these symptoms, the constant chronic elevated levels are detrimental to our brain. Our brain is very susceptible from that damage, and chronic stress can cause an increase in glucocorticoids, which are steroid hormones that are found in our immune system. This causes cellular changes in our hippocampus, which makes it harder to suppress the production of cortisol that I was talking about earlier. And this can cause more damage and inflammation in our body. This impacts our attention, our short-term memory, our learning, maybe our word finding. We have problems finding words, or we stumble over our words, and emotional distress. These high cortisol levels creates this oxygen and nutrient and energy deprivation. And then what happens is our nerve pathways are being disconnected. And then it's harder to create new brain cells, so that's going to be inhibited. Our sleep is altered during times of stress. And typically, our sleep is the time when our body will rejuvenate, our body will repair, our brains will regenerate itself. So all in all, this damage is going to set your brain up for memory or cognition problems. And stress can make you feel like your brain is out of control. Stress can be very emotionally draining and physically draining as well. The reduced memory function is just one thing that happens when you're under chronic and long periods of stress. Remember when I was saying that cortisol is good? It helps us form new memories. Well, the elevated cortisol actually impacts the glucose availability. And glucose is actually a major source of fuel for our brain. The glucose availability to our brain is decreased, which impacts our ability to form new memories. And then that excess of cortisol inhibits the access to the short-term and long-term memories, which is a major factor in age-related memory loss. And as our memory goes, well, so does our learning, because our learning is dependent on our ability to form, store, and access those memories. Remember I was talking about the hippocampus being part of the stress feedback loop? Well, the prolonged excess of exposure will kill cells off in our hippocampus as well by inducing the cortisol resistance and an influx of calcium, which basically excites those nerves to death. And then this will lead to your hippocampus shrinking. The reduced size of the hippocampus impairs your stress hormone feedback loop and impairs your learning and your memory. And not only that, but then your prefrontal cortex will shrink as well, and that's responsible for problem solving, adaptation to challenge, emotional processing and regulation, impulse control, and regulation of glucose and insulin metabolism. And you can feel that you're so stressed and overwhelmed that you just can't think straight, and I'm sure many of us have probably been there from time to time. And then our ability to cope with stress is diminished. What also happens, it helps encourage the presence of toxins as well. So normally our blood-brain barrier will only let certain substances in, but when it becomes weak, the barrier becomes leaky, and this allows toxins in our brain, such as the drugs and the chemicals, which wreaks havoc kind of similar to that of having like a leaky gut. Long-term stress will weaken the blood-brain barrier, and then that allows the toxins to get into the brain and then cause further damage. But it's not all bad news. I promise I'll be talking about some good stuff soon, how we can support our brain. There are several steps into helping our brain recover, and nutrition is a big part, and the starting place for a healthy brain is what we put in our mouth. When I was younger, I used to get annoyed at that saying, "You are what you eat," and that really would annoy me. But as I get older, I find that that's more and more true. The foods that we eat will provide our body with nutrients it needs to function optimally, and our brain, because it requires a lot of energy, has many nutrient requirements, such as proteins and carbs, and our fats are broken down into the vitamins and minerals, amino acids, which are building blocks, and then fatty acids. And our brain requires a steady blood sugar, meaning that our meals need to be nutritionally dense while supporting blood sugar. In fact, our body tightly regulates blood sugar, so it only wants, for optimal health, about 3/4 a teaspoon of glucose in our bloodstream at all time. So that's why it's important to create the healthy, balanced, nutritionally balanced meals. So how we can do that, a good starting place is every meal you want to include some healthy fats, and we're going to go over these a little bit more further on. Some quality protein at every meal is important. And then of course we know our vegetables and fruits. They say you want to aim for about 3 to 5 servings per meal or per day. So the importance of fat, I want to go over that first, because over the past years, fat has kind of been demonized. We see so many different types of fad diets and out there. We got the low fat, you got the keto, you got the Atkins, South Beach. There's so many different diets out there. But fat is very important. So 60% of our brain is actually comprised of fat or fat-containing compounds. And incredible as it sounds, these essential fatty acids and phospholipids are among the most vital sources of healthy fats. And they're critical for a stressed brain, and they're vital for brain energy, thinking, memory, and balanced moods. Again, 60% of our brain is comprised of fat, and 25% of that fat is actually cholesterol. So fats help energize our brains. They also help enhance the cell communication and serve as a valuable energy support or source. They support healthy cell membranes and then the neurotransmitter production, serotonin and all the other feel-good chemicals. A good way to incorporate these fats into your diet is in cooking. You can use it as a garnish or as a snack, but you're going to want to aim for quality animal products if you're not a vegan, because they provide good fat, organic butter, cheese, and cream. Then there's olive oil, coconut oil, sesame oil, avocado, nuts, and seeds. And then another good source of omega-3 fatty acids is fish. While flax and chai and other plant-based foods sources are healthy and good for you, you would have to consume a lot more of those just to get the same amount that you would get from your fish. If you're taking an omega-3 supplement, just to get that amount, you'd have to have 10 times the amount of flaxseed. So cold water fish support your health best, and so those fish are going to be the Wild North Pacific salmon, albacore, tuna, sardines, and anchovies are really good for your brain, Northern Pacific cod, and then Pacific halibut. Another good alternative brain fuel is actually coconut oil. Coconut oil is rich in medium chain fatty acids, and they are a great alternative to our source of brain energy when our glucose stores are low. So the coconut oil actually helps stimulate the growth and maintenance of the neurons. Because they're converted to ketones, it's going to help support your brain and support healthy vasculature to supporting cognition with aging, and enhances the brain energy production. So the fatty acids in coconut oil, and coconut oil has been demonized over the years as well, but what happens because they're medium chained, they're converted quickly to energy and they're not stored on your body. So they're going to be converted quickly as energy by our liver. And those coconut oil supplies the ketones in the presence of carbs, as I mentioned earlier, which can then stimulate the growth and healing of our brain cells, and can additionally help or may reduce the plaques that form in your brains, the amyloid beta plaques that are then related to Alzheimer's. Can help improve mitochondria function of our brain cells according to many studies. And when I mention studies too, if anybody is interested in those studies or the sources of those, if you want to get with me afterwards, I can provide those with you guys. All right. All right, so this is a big one that a lot of people kind of blink their eyes when I talk to them, but that's saturated fats. So saturated fats, if you choose the right kind of saturated fats and you choose the kinds that have not been damaged by frying, you have the good quality, they can be very beneficial for our health as well. Saturated fats are not damaging to your heart or vascular system and can help support your brain health. They help raise the HDL, which is the protective cholesterol. And they've actually done several studies where people eliminated the carbohydrates, the bad carbohydrates, while increasing the good sources of saturated fats. So we're not talking about, packaged goods or anything like that. We're talking about the coconut oils and all those fats like that. They actually saw a decrease in their LDL and an increase in their HDL. And it's important to note, our brain, the fat is a is the optimal source of fuel for our brain, and then 50% of our cell membranes are actually comprised of saturated fat as well. So you can get too many unsaturated fats in your diet, and then the cell membranes will lose the structure. And then you can get too much saturated fats, and the cells actually become hard and they lose their flexibility. So in both cases, the cells cannot uptake nutrients and expel the waste products. All right, trans fat, as I mentioned earlier, that's the source that we want to stay away from. So the trans fat is actually our brain's enemy. They are found in many of our fried, our packaged foods, and are found in our vegetable oils, our partially hydrogenated oils such as the soybean, corn, canola, vegetable oils, and things like that. So the trans fats, study and research has shown that those have actually been associated with poor cognitive health, decreases in total brain volume, increased inflammatory responses because they're full of pro-inflammatory fatty acids, poor nerve function and communication, poor blood flow. You have oxygen and nutrients in the brain are being not able to go where they need to go. Then you've got the increased blood clotting, impaired memory, learning, and focus, and then mood and mental dysfunction. So when opting for your meat sources, so now I want to talk about protein. I'm kind of jumping all over, but I'm going to kind of bring it together a little bit later in this class. But the next up is going to be about the protein sources. So when you're opting for your protein or your meat sources, you're going to want to opt for naturally raised beef or meat. So they're going to be healthier in many ways. The conventionally raised beef, we all know that they're fed with the synthetic hormones, which are disruptive to our own hormones, including the ones that help regulate the stress. Then they're fed with antibiotics, which will damage our digestive wellness, and then our wellness or digestive issues can increase or affect mood and mental issues as well. The naturally raised difference for the cattle is that they're not fed any of those synthetic hormones or antibiotics. They're fed a vegetarian diet. And then their ratio of omega-6, which is the pro-inflammatory fatty acids compared to the omega-3s, which help with inflammation, is much better. So they have more omega-3s and less omega-6. Also, the naturally raised beef are higher in many vitamins and minerals, the CoQ10, L-carnitine, zinc, and A and E, which helps support brain communication and help support healthy cell membranes. All right, next up we're going to be talking about the vegetables. Remember that balanced meal that I was talking about? Vegetables and fruit play a big part in our diet because the vegetables are packed with those vitamins and those minerals and phytonutrients that help our body function optimally and deal with stress. And those are the vitamin C, the B vitamins, and then magnesium and folate, etc. So a quality diet supports the health of the entire body. For example, anybody in here like asparagus? Okay, good. Not a whole lot of people like asparagus. So asparagus is actually high in folic acid, which can help assist in the making of serotonin, which affects our mood because that's the feel-good chemical. So it's important that we make sure to eat an abundance of vegetables and include a serving at each mealtime. Up next is fruit. So fruit is nature's perfect treat, a sweet treat. So fruit provides us with vitamins and minerals, antioxidants, and the phytonutrients. But it's important to note that while they are naturally occurring fruit sugars, that they can impact our blood sugar, which does affect the health of our brain. So it's important that we want to combine that with fat and protein to help stabilize the blood sugar. So typically they say more than 2 to 3 a day may be too much for those who do suffer with blood sugar issues. And of course, is be mindful of your glycemic index and load. For example, some people can't have bananas because that impacts their blood sugar too much. So it's important to be mindful of that when you're creating your healthy meals so you can help balance out your blood sugar. Up next is something that gets often overlooked, and that's water. Most people don't drink enough water. And you're probably wondering, okay, what does water have to do with brain health? Well, water is considered the elixir of life itself, and it's the medium for all metabolic reactions. It helps our body remove the wastes, and it aids in the nutrient absorption and transport. It helps our body metabolize fat. They say that when you're choosing water, filtered or spring water is the best because you want to minimize your intake of fluoride, which is found in a lot of waters. Over 400 studies and research have studied that fluoride can damage the brain. I don't know if any of you guys remember when nursery water used to have fluoride in it. Any of you guys remember when nursery water used to have fluoride in it? When my kids were little, all the nursery water on the shelves had fluoride in it. But now lots of research and studies have been put into this showing that fluoride can have detrimental impacts to our health. The brain health and blood sugar, like I was mentioning earlier, creating the balanced meals is essential for supporting the healthy blood sugar levels and support the brain health, and I'm going to tell you why. The blood sugar is easily used by our brain cells for their energy, but too much can cause damage to the proteins and overstimulation of some brain cells and brain fog. Sugar is very pro-inflammatory, causes inflammation, cellular aging, oxidative damage in our body. Blood sugar, high blood sugar can cause stress to our body and send stress signals. And high levels of insulin in our body, which is caused by a high blood sugar, will stimulate the production of the amyloid proteins that I'm going to talk quite a bit about throughout, which have been associated with Alzheimer's. However, on the other token, too little results in fatigue, increased in the stress hormones, and brain fog as well. That's why it's important to what I like to call it the blood sugar lazy river. We don't want to be on the blood sugar roller coaster. The roller coasters at Silver Dollar City may be kind of fun, but being on the blood sugar roller coaster is not fun at all. The high blood sugar will cause oxidative damage, but it also increases our blood pressure, and then the surge of adrenaline, and it can be cause for mood swings and brain fog. So eating unbalanced meals will take the blood sugar outside of its normal range. Remember I said your body only wants about 3/4 a teaspoon in its blood at all time. It will take it out of its normal range, spiking the stress response. So eating the balanced meals help your blood sugar stable, and then that's going to help support your brain health. So once you're able to create the balanced meals, there are a couple of brain builders. I actually have a list of 10, but I'm not going to go over all 10 for sake of time. But these are what I call my top 10 brain builders, or foods that help support brain health. Salmon, eggs, berries, coconut, grass-fed beef, nuts and seeds, leafy greens, avocados, curry or turmeric, and green tea. So I do want to highlight the eggs though. So eggs are actually a complete protein, and they help provide choline and other brain nutrients such as the vitamin A, K, E. Then they're full of B complex, phosphorus, potassium, and fatty acids like DHA, which help support brain health. Berries provide powerful antioxidants and help support healthy levels of inflammation in our body, promote vascular health, so then you have more blood, oxygen, and nutrients going to your brain. So eat those berries. All right. We also have what I like to call the top 10 brain busters to avoid, and I'm going to list those. Some people don't like this list because there's a couple things on here that they might like. The first one is soda, alcohol. Then we have the soy, corn, and canola oil. We have margarine and trans fats, tobacco, white flour, white sugar, energy drinks, artificial sweeteners, and artificial colors. So consumption of alcohol, for instance, a lot of people don't like when I touch on that. While the effects actually depend on how much or how often you're drinking, consumption can induce deficiencies over time of the B vitamins, which is important for energy production, and vitamin C. And over time, consumption can shrink the brain and the cortex frontal lobe, which that's the spot that contains most of the dopamine-sensitive neurons in our central cortex. And because alcohol is a depressant, it can affect which of the neurotransmitters are being produced and how much. The next one I want to talk about is the soy, corn, and canola oil. Because they are high in those omega-6s, which are those pro-inflammatory fats, so those are going to increase oxidative damage, inflammation in your body, and can impact your LDL. Artificial sweeteners are considered brain poison, and they degrade to toxic chemicals such as the chloride and formaldehyde, which will slowly damage our neurological system and kill off our nerve cells, And then a big one is artificial colors, which incidentally, those are banned in Europe, by the way. So they've been linked to ADHD, cancer, reduced dopamine levels, and much more other health issues. So that is the healthy and balanced meals. Other factors that impact the brain health are going to be getting enough sleep, managing your stress, supporting your digestive wellness, and training your brain. And I promise I won't dwell on each of those because I'll be mindful of your time. But sleep is important to our health. Enough sleep is vital to brain function, and most people don't get enough sleep. They say that most people need at least 7 to 9 hours, and a lot of people that I talk to do not get the 7 to 9 hours of good quality sleep. So during sleep, our brain actually, believe it or not, is very active. We wouldn't think it is, but it is. So it's going to help us process and store those experiences and long-term memories, and then selectively preserving the emotional memories, dealing with stress, and helping our body recharge and heal, and then hormone production and balanced. And lack of sleep can do a couple of different things. It impairs our memory and performance. I don't know, have any of you ever had a really bad night's sleep and then gone to work and then you're trying to function and your productivity was low? Maybe you were more irritable. Maybe things just kind of got to you a little bit more than what they normally do. It makes it harder to carry out the calculations, and then there's the mood swings that are involved. And research shows that sleep will help repair our brain. So sleep is very vital for our brain health. Besides sleep, a big thing is stress management, and that's another area where a lot of people are lacking in. Excuse me, sorry. So chronic or major stress will reduce the circulation to the brain, resulting in the oxygen and nutrient deprivation and damages to our hippocampus. So that's important, why it's important to help regulate cortisol through stress management practices. So a stressed brain will learn differently because humans are not designed for long-term stress and having chronic stress hormone. Stress damages every type of cognition and affects our memory, our learning, our motor skills, our moods, and our emotions. And over time can damage our nerve pathways. So we want to make sure that we practice stress management activities in our daily life. So yoga and meditation and deep breathing are just two examples, because many of popular techniques that are found to reduce stress derive from yoga. That's the controlled breathing and meditation, physical movement and stretching, and mental imagery. Then you've got the meditation and deep breathing. So that's going to support relaxation of your brain waves. That's going to help support healthy cortisol levels. Another good one is going out for a leisurely walk or a stroll, because that's going to help with the cortisol production, relaxation of the brain waves, and then that kind of helps you refocus, reevaluate, and kind of just rethink things. So walking is just as important. Whatever way you choose to help stress management, that's going to help with the cortisol production. Now, a big one is our gut health. Everything is tied to our gut. So have you ever had that gut feeling, or maybe you've had butterflies in your stomach? Would you be surprised to learn that it's not just in your head? So our GI tract, our gut, is actually referred to as our second brain. So many different things, our overall well-being is tied to our gut. Our GI tract uses more than 30 different neurotransmitters, just like our brain. In fact, 95% of serotonin and 50% of dopamine are made in our gut. And 100 million neurotransmitters line the length of our gut, which is approximately the same that is found in our brain. Nearly every chemical that controls the brain has been identified in the gut. And the gut flora, or probiotics, have a great influence over our brain function. GI disorders and even temporary indigestion can affect our sleep cycles, heighten our pain responses, our mental states, mood, and other cognitive ability. And our gut actually sends the signals back and forth to the brain with the wide influence over our mood, our mental state, and our cognition. So our gut, that's why it's considered the second brain. So the more we use our brains, the more we help support our brains through optimal nutrition and probiotics and gut health, and the more we take care of our brains, the better thinkers we can become. Just like our bodies, we need to exercise our brains for optimal performance. Our brains continue to expand and adapt to the stimuli that they receive. So good ways to do that could be reading a good book, playing brain games, practice meditation, maybe learning how to play a new instrument, learning a new language, or maybe just playing cards, dice and dominoes and other math-based games, or even just sitting on the computer and playing solitaire. Those are all great ways to help exercise our brains. So now that we've covered the nutritional and some lifestyle factors that support our brain health, I want to quickly talk about supplements that can help support our brain health. And as stated before, our brains require a lot of energy. So that's where the B vitamins come in. B vitamins are essential for our energy production. They support overall nerve functioning, and they're needed to make some neurotransmitters. And the B vitamins actually are depleted rapidly under periods of stress or even by a bad diet. B12 is essentially important for memory and overall healthy cognition. And deficiency symptoms of B12 can mimic Alzheimer's. Then we've got the energizing nutrients, so CoQ10 and fish oil, and I'm going to mention fish oil a couple of times because fish oil is just very beneficial. So the CoQ10, that's vital for helping our brain and cells make energy, the fuel of life. And then powerful free radical scavengers that protect the fat in our brains from damage. Then we've got the fish oil. And if you don't like fish oil, there's algae oils and other omega-3 oils as well. But the fish oil provides the valuable fats for the energy production. They're critical for all aspects of brain health. Fish oils are also the best sources of the EPA and DHA, which help increase the genes involved in the neurotransmitter activity, helps supports the connections or communications between our brain cells, helps support our memory, focus, and attention. Another supplement that helps to optimize brain cell communications, or the cells communicating with each other, is called phosphatidylcholine. And yes, I practiced saying that. Phosphatidylcholine's role in the maintenance of cell membranes integrity is vital to all biological processes. So phosphatidylcholine helps the brain make acetylcholine, which is involved in the memory, the learning, and decision making. It helps support the nerve signaling and communication and the normal speech and movement patterns. Up next, we've got another phosphatidylcholine supplement, but it's phosphatidylserine. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of phosphatidylserine. So phosphatidylserine is another great supplement to help optimize our brain communication because it helps protect our brain from stress-induced damage. So it offers comprehensive support. It builds the fatty covering around the nerve cells called the myelin sheath. And it's an essential part of all cell membranes and enhances the cell-to-cell communication. So it's going to help support optimized memory, learning, focus, coordination, and overall cognition. Fish oil, I said I was going to mention it a couple times, is also good because it's, like I mentioned earlier, the best source of EPA and DHA, but it helps increase the activity of genes involved in neurotransmitter activity, supports connections and communications, and is going to help sleep, general cognition. Vitamin D is up next. So vitamin D, aka the sunshine vitamin. So vitamin D acts as a powerhouse for our brain, and most Americans are deficient in vitamin D. Vitamin D is crucial because it helps support the optimal brain development, aids in neurotransmitter production, and healthy nerve cell growth, supports a healthy brain vasculature. It's going to help support your mood, learning, language skills, information processing skills through gene regulation. It also aids in clearing up those amyloid plaques that I was talking about earlier. All right. And if anybody needs any clarification or me to go over any of this after class, I'll be gladly available to do that with you guys as well. So magnesium is another supplement. Magnesium helps support healthy nerve functioning. So magnesium is known as a calming mineral, and it's involved as a cofactor in over 320 enzymes going on in our body, which help regulate all the biochemical processes. Magnesium is essential for the neurotransmitter production and brain energy levels. Next up, we've got some amino acids, and I'm not going to go over all of those for sake of time as well, but amino acids are vital for neurotransmitter production. So those help regulate most emotional states, our sleep, our wake cycles, our memory, and our other essential cognitive processes. The amino acids for the brain include the GABA or gamma aminobutyric acid, L-taurine, L-theanine, 5-HTP, or L-tryptophan. So the L-taurine is going to help function as a calming calming amino. The L-theanine is found in green and black teas, and that's going to help with improved focus and relaxation, and it's going to increase the alpha waves in our brain. And then 5-HTP, which I know a lot of people may be familiar with, is actually a form of the amino acid L-tryptophan, which converts to the feel-good chemical serotonin, which is beneficial for mood and healthy sleep. And then last up, L-tyrosine, that's going to serve as the basic building blocks of dopamine and adrenaline. Next up is the probiotics. If you're feeling overwhelmed with this amount of information, I'm almost done. But the probiotics, so they've done a lot of studies on the probiotics, and according to my studies, the probiotics may help support brain communication. The mice were giving Lactobacillus ramosis, it's a probiotic, and the mice that were given that, they showed fewer stress, anxiety, and depression-related behaviors to those who were fed with just the broth. And these findings highlight the important role of our gut bacteria and what it plays with our brain health mood because of the gut-brain axis. And it has the potential to make a direct and significant effect on our brain chemistry. The GI tract has significant influence over our brain function and emotions. And incidentally, the brain and the gut actually send the signals back and forth to each other, especially when we're under a stressed state. Furthermore, probiotic strains have been shown to influence the neurotransmitter receptors because remember, a lot of them are created in our gut, and this can help support the positive mood, a relaxed nervous system, learning, focus, and brain health. While some supplements may help energize our brains and others help optimize brain cell communications, others can help support circulation. And we've got ginkgo biloba. Ginkgo has been demonstrated as having antioxidants, anti-inflammatory, cardiovascular, and neurological effects. Studies shown that ginkgo extract increases the alpha brain activity, which can lead to enhanced mental activity. Ginkgo supports the circulation through small capillaries, bringing more blood, oxygen, and nutrients to the brain, and then helps stimulate the electrical activity in the brain. Up next, we got the fish oil again. So the fish oil is going to help support the healthy blood viscosity and normal blood clotting and helps to regulate the inflammation. Other vitamins and supplements that can help with circulation are vitamin E and alpha lipoic acid. So vitamin E, where it helps is it helps by supporting the healthy clot and platelet formation and normal blood viscosity, and it's going to help protect the fats, especially those in our cell membranes, from free radical damage. The alpha lipoic acid protects our brains and nerve cells from free radicals, and they help support healthy nerve functioning. Elevated blood sugars, what I was talking about earlier, not only affect our brain, but they damage our nerve fibers. And that lipoic acid is going to help help stabilize the blood glucose level. And that's going to increase our blood circulation, and then this can help stimulate the growth of new fibers and nerve cells, and can help improve the communication between the nerve cells. Then we have turmeric that's going to help with modulating the inflammation. So turmeric modulates the inflammation through nearly 100 different biochemical mechanisms in our body. The best thing with turmeric, when you find a supplement, you want to find one that has like the black pepper, because that's going to increase the bioavailability or the absorption of the turmeric. Or you can use it in your cooking. I like to add turmeric and black pepper to my eggs. It might stain my spatula and look a little weird, but I think it tastes fantastic. And I actually prefer it that way versus taking a supplement. Then it's important, though, that while these herbs may help support your brain health, it's always important to speak to your doctor or health practitioner before taking any herbal supplement, though. We also have brainy herbs. There's so many different brainy herbs that support our health, and I'm going to list them, but I'm only going to talk about one. So we have bacopa, the turmeric, as mentioned earlier, sage, rosemary, which is good for cooking, gotu-kola, ginkgo, hawthorn. Then there's ashwagandha, tulsi, which is holy basil, green tea, passion flower, skullcap, hops, and oat straws. But I'm only going to focus on the ashwagandha. So the ashwagandha actually is an adaptogen, and that helps support our adrenals and a healthy stress response. So that's going to help support your nerve health. It helps promote relaxation and sleep, and then that's going to help support that balanced cortisol level. So that's going to try to keep the inflammation down, and then the damage from the cortisol lower. So now that you've learned ways to support your health, there's so many different steps that you can take to help support your brain health. As I mentioned earlier, eating a balanced meal to help fuel your brain, making sure that you have good quality protein in every meal to help stabilize the blood sugar, including those healthy fats, and then ditching the sugar, the trans fats, and the fake foods that cause inflammation and oxidative damage in our body and our brain, and then supplement based on your needs. So there's so much that we can do to help support our brain health that I don't have enough time to talk about it today, but maybe hopefully I gave you something to ponder. And if you want to learn more, I am available at Natural Grocers. I do free nutritional health coaching sessions there. They're one-on-one, and I do follow-up coaching sessions, and they're all free. We meet in my office, and then I will actually give you recommendations that are more tailored and individualized to who you are as a person. So I am glad that you guys came today for my talk. Thank you for listening. That is what all I have to talk to you today about nutritional support for brain health.